Welcome to the Spotlight series. Don't just survive, thrive. Most of us have experienced challenging times, now more than ever. The key is how we choose to respond, whether we merely survive or thrive. My name is Nicola Steele, founder of JJP Talent Solutions, an Australian IT recruitment company. With over 20 years' expertise, I provide insights on how you can transform your career to the next level. However, we are not just our careers. We are spouses, partners, parents, friends, etc., with a variety of needs and wants. In this podcast, I talk to a diverse range of experts from different professions, such as finance, law, psychology, and health, to provide insights on how you can survive and thrive. I don't have all the answers. However, collectively, we can instill hope, clarity, and inspiration. I hope you enjoy listening. I'm delighted to introduce Tanya Meessmann, founder of Girl Shaped Flames, keynote speaker, and also activator at SheEO. Tanya, thank you for joining me on episode 5 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. And tell me a bit more about yourself and what you do.
Absolutely. Well, I, as you mentioned, am the founder of social enterprise Girl Shaped Flames, which is has been over the last few years an events-based company focused on developing the confidence, skills, and industry experience for teenage girls in high school. I'm a Queenslander through and through, born and bred. And I have travelled the world during my lifetime. I studied advertising, marketing and communications at university. And then after a few years in Sydney, travelled overseas. And I was overseas for 7 years and returned back 6-7 years ago now with my now husband. And I have a lovely, beautiful young family, 2.5-year-old and 5-year-old, both boys. Ironically, considering my work with girls.
So you've got a very diverse background, and with all the travel, etc., and also you've got your 2 little boys. So what made you have that passion for empowering teenage girls?
Yeah, it's always a really good question. To be honest, I came up with the concept of Girl Shaped Flames at a time when I was at a real crossroads of my own life. I'd had 10 years or so working in advertising, big ad agencies, big brands, high intensity work. Plus, I'd also spent about 12 years as a film producer that I moved into during my time in advertising. And I had ended up back in Queensland at Queensland Academies, in fact, heading up their brand and comms division. And I was having a bit of a life moment with our second bub on the way and trying to decide what I wanted to do to move forward. And while I was in that zone, I had 2 young girls, as in early 20s, in my life at the 2 different places I worked, who I'd been mentoring throughout their roles, and I'd just been seeing them struggle in their own different ways with confidence and self-belief. And I think I'd probably been so focused on my own career until that point in time. I'd been very focused on developing my own skills and moving myself forward. I didn't really ever take a lot of time to sit around and look at everyone else and see how they were going. And I don't think I had the capacity really until that point in time to turn around and give as much as I suddenly had the capacity to do. And it was in seeing their struggles, I started to look around and notice more and more the struggles that girls were having. And because I was working in a high school landscape at that time, that was also an example closest to me. And so it was through speaking with a lot of parents, being head of marketing and comms there, I spoke with a lot of parents and was finding out interesting insights about what was going on with girls' self-esteem, confidence and self-belief. Simultaneously, I would have people hear my life story and things that I had done. I've always been the youngest at things, the youngest person on the McDonald's account, the youngest person production managing a feature film, and so on and so forth. And so people would look at my life and think, gosh, you're so courageous, you're so brave, look at what you've gone and done. And for me, I'd never really considered that. I never sat around going, gosh, you're brave, Tanya. I'd sort of just Gotten on.
I always think of you as being terribly dynamic, like a
Oh,
dynamo of energy.
I'll take dynamic. That's a good one. Thank you. But that's it. Like I think I had always propelled myself forward because that's what stimulates me, and I get excited about doing things and moving forward. And people really saw that as this confidence and courage. And I looked around and was like, well, I wonder why that is, and I wonder why I find it easier to a degree, and other people and girls in particular don't. And it was that little nugget that kind of kicked off Girl Shaped Flames as far as wanting to dive into confidence and self-belief and dealing with fear and failure and all those kinds of things. Because what I came to finally be able to articulate, you know, when you have the thoughts in your mind, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is you're actually trying to get to. And I finally
all the time.
Yeah. And to be honest, I only got to it probably about 2 years after starting Girl Shaped Flames. But really, once I got to it, it was about the fact that you want to be so proud of your life. You want to be proud of yourself when you get to any point in your life. You want to be able to look back and think, I did really well. I handled that well. I, survived and thrived well. I have made good choices, or I've dealt with the choices that were not so good in a good way. And what I really want is I want every single girl to believe that about themselves. I want them to be able to go through all the stages of their life thinking about themselves with pride and with self sort of belief and determination. And if there's anything I could do that would help influence that positively, then it really was a light in the dog park one day when I was walking the dog. And it was a lightning bolt where I just thought, I have to be able to help them somehow. They have to understand and see how rich and fulfilling and amazing life can be if you can find that courage and that's where the fire in the belly analogy came from. If you can find that fire in the belly and you can fan those flames, then you really can do anything you set your mind to. So I already had one little boy at the time, and it was interesting, the day that I sort of visualized Girl Shaped Flames, we had not yet found out the gender of my second, what was to be little boy. And so I must admit, I was sitting there in the dog park, rubbing my little 4-month pregnant belly going, it's a girl. I've had this epiphany because I'm having a little girl. And oh my goodness. And it must have been about literally the next week we went for the 20-week scan and we said, we want to find out the gender. And the lady was like, oh yeah, you can see it there. I was like, you can see what? She's like, just there, you can see it. And I was like, oh, okay, but I thought it was a girl. But what's so beautiful about having boys, sorry, this is going off on a slight tangent, but what's beautiful about having boys in the landscape I'm in is that what's really interesting to see is how their perception of girls and understanding of girls is being shaped from such a young age. My eldest is 5.5. So what I really see being blessed with 2 boys is it's now my opportunity to raise 2 men who will understand the equality between men and women, and that girls are really equals for them to work with and, go and problem solve with and change the world with together. So, yeah, that's how I ended up running Girl Shaped Flames.
That's, I've known you for over a year now, and obviously know some of the story because my eldest daughter's been a Girl Shaped Flame. But that's a really beautiful story. Thank you for that, Tanya. It's really, really lovely to hear that. And interestingly, actually, the Girl Shaped Flame, eldest daughter, is at one of the Queensland Academies who you were the marketing and comms person for a few years ago.
Yeah.
So she's nearly 15. She spends a lot of time in her room at the moment. Mainly she appears for food, drink. So it got me thinking, and talking to you as well. We're all experiencing this crisis in a different way. But how are teenage girls perceiving, understanding, handling this situation at the moment?
Yes, well, look, from the conversations I've been having with the girls and their parents, there's obviously a varying degree of experience that they're having, and it really also comes down to the personality of the girl as we make our way through the crisis. And it's ranging from Some girls are actually really thriving under the circumstances because, if anything, they're probably the slightly more introverted girls. They quite like the ability to focus. They like being left alone to get on with what they want to do. They like not having the pressure and sometimes the stress that comes with going to school every day. If you're not someone who's particularly one of the more open and engaging personality, if you're not one of those people who needs friends, the extrovert kind of need the social capacity. Yes. So some of the girls I've been speaking to in that capacity have just really enjoyed it, and they're taking time out and they're playing in the backyard that they haven't done since they were younger, and they're connecting a bit better with their family members, and they're getting more time with their mum, and there's some really, really positive things coming out of the experience for them. And we've been reading a lot of articles around new learning opportunities. So, we still need to, obviously, curriculum will remain and there needs to be progress made in that regard for the homeschooling. But there are so many other ways that they're learning as well. And even just being around their parents more. Okay, on the one hand, it's driving everyone absolutely bonkers. But on the other hand, imagine what they're learning through osmosis from the parents. Imagine how they're listening in on work calls and they're hearing negotiations at play, and they're hearing subsiding big personalities at play, or coming up with ideas and being creative. So I think that there are some girls that are actually really thriving under the circumstances. Then there are other girls and teenagers in general are incredibly, and all humans, but teenagers are heightened social beings who need that connection. And it's easy to take for granted the fact that they have access to that connection through the internet and through their social channels and things like that. But we all know that the physical experience of being social, the physical experience of being in the presence of another person, of reading body language and hearing voice tone and being able to feel an energy from someone, that really feeds us as human beings as well. So there are girls that are also struggling because with that comes an erosion in their self-perception as well. They're not sure if they're getting the validation back and forth that they usually get when they're at school on a daily basis, whether that is from their friends or whether it's from the teachers. There is a fairly consistent validation process that goes, yes, you are funny, or yes, you're nice, or yes, you're smart, or yes, that was a good thing you did, or whatever it is. And I think that is where some of the damage is being done at the moment, because sitting and chatting, even video chat, is still not entirely the same experience as being in a room with someone. So in that regard, I do think that, and structure. So if one thing is what they're missing out on is the social connections and the social cues, but the other thing they're missing is structure. And as much as most teenage girls I've ever met will moan to you about school and how it gets in the way, but they do really need that, because they are still young and their brains haven't developed to the point where they can sit and concentrate and self-learn for hours on end and self-direct and self-moderate. They don't have those skills yet. And so the idea that they have to now take responsibility for their own learning and try to keep focused on something for 45 minutes without a teacher hanging over them saying, stay focused, that is also presenting a really huge challenge. And I think there's a lot of realization happening with some of the girls about where their strengths and weaknesses lie. So what I think is going to be very interesting is what, of both examples I just talked about, of the girls who are thriving and then the girls who are struggling, it'll be really interesting to see when everything goes back and we return back to regular schooling and regular structure and social and so on and so forth. It will be interesting to see what sticks and what of their own self-realization continues beyond this, or whether, like so many things that happen with humans in general, it sort of gets forgotten after a time and we just go back to normal.
It's really interesting. You know my eldest daughter, and she fits very much into that introvert section. Yeah, she's hiding in a room, but she always did anyway. Yeah. And in a way, she is thriving because she doesn't have to deal with the other stuff. She's just focusing on her study. She makes all her food ready in the morning, so she's just got a constant supply that she can potter out for. And so she is very organised in that way. To be honest with you, if I was a teenager at this present moment in time, I'd be the other side of the spectrum. I'd be scaling the walls, being stuck with my mum and dad.
Yeah.
But also she's year 10. If she was in year 12 even, and missing your exams, your formals, etc., that must be really, really hard, because those are pivotal moments in people's school years and what have you.
Yeah.
So I really feel for them. But in terms of, as parents, teenage daughters can be hard work, but what can we do to make their lives easier and more enjoyable, and our own as parents as well, so that we can really thrive on the other side of this crisis?
So I guess my key tips would be patience. Communication is a huge one, and I'm a communication advocate. And probably structure to a degree, structure and boundaries still. So just quickly running through those. So patience is so incredibly important, because everyone's being trapped in goldfish bowls, and everyone's going to be getting agitated. The girls are getting agitated, the parents are agitated, the siblings are agitated, the grandparents are calling up agitated because they want to see all the kids, and so on and so forth. So everyone has this sort of underlying agitation going on. But it's really hard for young people to moderate agitation. And as adults, it becomes our responsibility to set the tone, essentially, of the house and of the perception of the situation. So if you've got parents storming around the house saying how horrible the situation is and how bad it is and how stressed they are and how they desperately just want to go for a wine with their girlfriends and so on and so forth, well, that's just perpetuating to the kids in the house is that, oh, that's how we're supposed to react to this situation. That's how we're supposed to feel. So I would say patience is really important.
We've just got to let some things, I know you need boundaries, but let things go that don't really matter that much as well. And it's actually, the podcasting idea came about because of that, because looking for positive things to do rather than whining, because you can't go out and see your friends or go to the gym or do whatever things you enjoy doing, and trying to make it as positive as possible, which is sometimes a challenge as well.
It is, but I think for me, one of the ways that I try to stay as patient as I can, though I'm dealing with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, is also around keeping in mind how temporary this is. And it might take a long temporary. It might be the rest of the year. In some way, our lives are affected by this, from social distancing or event restrictions or whatever it is. But in the grand scheme of what hopefully many of us will experience a 70, 80-year life, we're talking a 12-month period of time here. And so anyone who's experiencing anything that is negative right now but will not be negative anymore once we're through this, that's the mantra, is that this too shall pass, this is temporary, we're just going to get through this situation day by day, and we know that there is an end in sight. We don't know when that end is going to be, but there will be an end, and there's evidence already around the world to show that there is progress being made, so that's really positive. So as parents, really, you just want to be setting a vibe within the house that's about that. It's about, being patient, positive thinking, and so on and so forth. So that kind of goes with the second one I mentioned, which was communication. So I come from a communication background, and I'm incredibly passionate about the power of communication. Now, anyone who's listening who is a parent of a teen has all just simultaneously rolled their eyes when I've said communication to do with teenagers. But I'm not talking about sitting down and trying to get them to talk to you and look you in the eye for an hour straight. I'm talking about integrating communication very softly and just naturally in amongst the day. And sometimes you have to hide it a little bit. Sometimes you have to sneak it into a dog walk while you're walking side by side, or washing the dishes, or, going in and folding up their washing actually like on their bed with them instead of over in your room and bringing the pile in. But communication is so incredibly powerful and therapeutic, and they won't come to you generally. That's the general rule of thumb as a teenager. Don't show your weakness and don't go to your parents for anything. So if you can find ways to just very sort of gently crack that door open for them to speak to you, you'd be really surprised to see what comes out. You'd be surprised to find out, how do they really feel about the situation that's going on? How do they feel about what's going to happen with their schooling and their grades? And, do they feel like they're missing out on stuff, or are they actually really enjoying it? Or what plans do they want to make for next year when all of this is kind of passing as best it can? If you can do that, what that does is it not only helps them process, it gives them an opportunity to process in their mind what they're actually going through, instead of just sitting in their heads and, running the cyclones. They can sit like any of us. You can sit, you can process while you talk it out. But the second thing it does is it really just builds that connection between the two people, and in this case, the parent and the daughter. And that connection's incredibly important, not just during COVID-19. That connection is so important during all of their teenage years. So if you can continue working on that, because what I've been seeing and some of the conversations I've been having is that as parents, we're really wrapped up in what we see to be the bigger crisis. We're losing our jobs. We don't have income. What happens when they start making me pay my mortgage again? When will we ever be able to service the car that's about to fall over and die? Is my husband going to lose his job? We're so wrapped up in that it's really easy to go days without even having just a proper conversation with your child. And they notice it. We don't notice it because we're running around thinking we're trying to solve all the big problems, but they know that they're secondary now because this has to come first. So I just can't stress enough how important it is to just try and keep communicating. Don't force it down their throats, but try to find natural opportunities to communicate.
Absolutely. And you'll think Jess's her life revolves around food, but I find breakfast time and lunchtime is a good time.
Yeah.
And sit round a table.
Yeah.
You're not forced to have a conversation, but you're more likely to have one because you sat down
proximity
in that kind of position.
Yeah.
And it's funny, her younger sister, who's primary school age, oh my goodness, she never stops communicating. Even the dog's ears are starting to bleed with all the communication she's doing. But anyway, that's a different story.
That's it. Watch that possibly die down as she hits her teens. The final quick thing I had there, which
yes,
I've actually totally forgotten what my third one was. Patience, communication. Structure. So structure. Yes. As I said before, one of the things they've really lost is structure. Now, I think it's an interesting one to navigate because on the one hand, we do need to be gentle on ourselves that we're not trying to keep operating life exactly the same way as it was when we had the resources at our disposal to have that structure. So we had schooling and extracurricular activities and after school care and all those kinds of things which helped us maintain that structure. That's all gone now, at least temporarily. So we can't expect ourselves to enact our days in exactly the same way. However, rhythm and structure and predictability is incredibly key, particularly for teenagers, to have an idea of what comes next and what is expected of me over the course of this day, let's say. So I would say it's a really good habit to get into, whether it's on the Sunday before the week starts or it's a daily thing, depending on how you're going to go about it, is just to set an agreement that is, I'm not going to sit here and monitor every single second that you're doing, but we just need to have a vague idea as to how's today going to roll out? What are you planning on doing when? And how long are we going to spend on things? Doesn't have to be to the minute, but if you've kind of lost 5 hours in the afternoon to researching a YouTube project, then there's sort of something's gone a little sideways. And you know what? They'll push against, some of them will push against it because they just feel like they're on holidays at the moment because they're at home and it just feels like holidays rules apply. But in all honesty, they also they do thrive better. It's just like when they were 4 years old. They need structure and teenagers need structure. But now what it is you have a 15-year-old, 4-year-old who can actually talk back and negotiate and communicate. But use that as another bonding tool to be able to go, all right, well, what do you think your day should look like and how are you going to fit these things in and how's it going to work? So I do think that would be really beneficial right now because what it also does is it calms the chaos a little bit. There are so many things out of their control in life at the moment and everywhere they turn seems to be another crisis and another unknown. If you can give them knowns and you can give them predictability, it just, even in a small way inside their own home, and bring in some rituals or bring in some mini traditions that happen. So every day at 4:30, we knock off and go for a 20-minute walk.
If you make it into a school day as well, that both girls know that 9 till 3 is school-based activities.
Yeah.
But not in a rigid framework.
No.
So, and also you can't be hovering over them every 5 seconds.
No, and having the conversation beforehand really helps with, because you can kind of have this agreement that says, all right, it's kind of like team management, I vaguely know what you're going to do today and what you're going to achieve. We're going to touch base at lunchtime, see how everyone's tracking. And then at the end of the day, when we're having our walk, we'll probably just recap a little bit of what you got through and do it again the next day. It doesn't have to be monitored.
Yeah, definitely. So, as I mentioned, my daughter's been involved with Girl Shaped Flames since last February.
Yeah.
I think it was when you did your parent-daughter breakfast at SheEO. So you've done all these fabulous breakfasts, the company excursions at SheEO, RACQ, Deloitte, etc., and then the monthly workshops.
Yeah.
I spent many a Sunday hanging around Fortitude Valley on my own, and then those fabulous courage camps. So they were all amazing, but because of social distancing rules, they're not possible now. So from a Girl Shaped Flames perspective, what are you doing at the current time to support the teenage girls rather than these on-site event driven things?
Yes, it's a good question, because as I mentioned right at the beginning, and I rephrased my wording to say, for the last 3 years, Girl Shaped Flames has been an events company. We find ourselves right now not an events company, as it were. And I bucked the trend a little bit against running to quickly take everything online. The main reason being the magic of what we do is because it's face-to-face. And I started an event company because I believe in the power of experiences for teenage girls, not the power of, being spoken to through a video screen. Not to say that that doesn't have its place, but for what we do and what we're trying to achieve, that's different. So I actually held off running and jumping everything online. Basically, what we're doing at the moment is we are still maintaining our relationships with our corporate partners and are looking at bringing back some of the events we already had planned out. Will come back later in the year once the social distancing laws are reduced somewhat. And it might be that portions of them become virtual and we have a sort of smaller group experiencing it, and we record it and put it out virtually for a wider audience anyway, which is a really great benefit. But to be honest, right after saying that we didn't run and put everything online, I actually have 2 online resources that one had already been developed. So our teen resilience kit is our 10-module program essentially for parents and daughters to use communication, which we were just talking about, to use communication to not only build the bond between them, but also keep building your daughter's resilience. The topics that we give you to speak about across each of the 10 modules are really focused on resilience and failure and fear, and talking about balance and regrets and success. So we have this 10-module program that's delivered to you online, and you just take sort of 30 minutes. You can either do it every day or you can do it every week. So it's like 30 minutes to sit down with your daughter and say, okay, today's topic is balance. Here's some videos that have been curated for us to watch. Watch the videos. They're only 2 or 3 minutes long each. And then sit and actually use our discussion points that we provide with the kit to sit and talk about it and have that connection. And the feedback we've been having so far is that you start like that and then you find yourself, an hour later talking about something completely different because you've ended up on this little rhythm that you've gone on. And that the things that the parents are discovering about their daughters they never even knew, especially around mindset, as well as the girls finding out things from their mums that they never knew, because now mum's suddenly got an opportunity to tell a story about something she's experienced in her life. So that's one thing that I'm really encouraging parents to grab and utilize during this time when they do have a bit more face time with the girls. The other thing we've created is I did quickly put one of my main trainings that I do with the girls in person. I have put that online, which is the Stronger Than You Know confidence course. And that's a 7-module course where it goes through a lot of the key topics I speak to girls about whenever I'm asked to come and work with them on a confidence basis. So, we talk about what is confidence and what does it look like, and we talk about the line of perceived ability and ways you can build your confidence and the power of positive feedback and things like that. So that is an online course with worksheets and things like that. But again, the feedback's been really positive as far as giving the girls an opportunity to sit and really focus on themselves for a period of time and focus on figuring out what it is that they want and need in order to develop their confidence, I would say. But what's been interesting about this time has been Girl-Shaped Flames has been intrinsically girl, as in teenage girl themselves focused since I began it. And that's because that's where I'm passionate about working with the girls. However, what I've discovered over the last 3 years is that I end up having some really robust conversations with parents, as you know, and as we have had too.
Yes.
Conversations about parents and what parents are going through and the challenges they're facing and the advice that they would like in order to be able to not only support and just keep their child's head above water, but how do you actually raise a confident girl? How do you raise a girl who will take chances or say yes to opportunities or just be really confident in her own ability and skill? And it's off the back of all those conversations that I've now started developing more resources for parents. And I started letting you guys get a look in by introducing those parent-daughter breakfast events, and I wanted to start involving the parents more. And then we had the info sessions, and I had more and more parents coming and wanting to know more. So also partly inspired by you inviting me to come on this podcast and having a bit of time on my hands, next week I'm launching the Raising Girl-Shaped Flames podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How fabulous.
For parents, which is focused solely on confidence. So what we do is we tackle confidence related to different areas of girls' life each week. So confidence and happiness, confidence and assertiveness, confidence and body issues. And each week we're going to be talking to different guests about that. And also myself and a good friend of mine, the neuroscientist, Dr. Diane Hanna, we are developing a parenting course called Raising the Teen Girl Brain. And that's going to be for parents to take online, which really helps them develop sort of the tools and the strategies they need to, like I said, not just keep your daughter's head above water, but really help, fan the flames, if we can bring it back to Girl-Shaped Flames, help her identify that fire inside and as a parent, know what you should do under different circumstances to really help her thrive. So while I thought I was looking at a 6-month holiday, seeing as all my events had been cancelled, it turns out I'm probably busier than I was.
Well, we do always know that about you, Tanya.
I know. Can't help myself. Yeah.
I'm like that as well. I'm not very good if I'm idling. Do send me the details so that I can share them on the show notes.
Yeah, there's a Facebook group as well. So Raising Girl-Shaped Flames is the Facebook group we have for parents of teenage girls. And in there, we're having some more private, robust conversations about parents who are struggling with trying to encourage their daughters to be braver and more courageous.
Yeah, I joined that last night.
Yeah, I saw. So welcome in.
So quite often, when I've been to your events in the past, one of the questions you ask the women is, what would you tell your 15-year-old self? So I'm going to turn that question on you, Tanya. Yeah. So if you were 15, like my daughter is in a couple of weeks, and you were experiencing this current crisis, what would you say to your 15-year-old self?
If I'm 15 now and experiencing it, because if I'm 15 back in the 90s and experiencing it, it's very different because we don't have social media and information overload and things like that. So I would probably I'd be suffering, incredibly suffering on the social front because I wouldn't be able to get a hold of my friends except from the landline. But if I was 15 now and today and having to deal with it, I would say my biggest challenge I would face would be overload of information. And I think that my advice to myself would be and I've said this to the girls earlier when this was happening, is find the sources of information you're going to trust, pick a couple of them and just listen to those and try to limit it. And then beyond listening to information that's coming in, then just try to have conversations with, again, 1 or 2 trusted people. It might be a parent, it might be someone else. Just try to keep your circle of information as smart, but also as under control as you can, because I'm someone who loves information and I'll sit there and absorb it until the cows come home. But it's not good for your mental health, and it's not good for your focus to be able to look forward and do things. The other piece of advice I gave the girls, which was intrinsically designed for me as well, and I went on to follow my own advice, ironically, is get a project. So we need something to focus on in order to take our attention away from just going down the rabbit hole. And my advice to the girls a few weeks back was get a project, get something, whether it's an art project or setting up a web page to save the dolphins project, like whatever it is, get a project, break it down into steps, say which bit of it you're going to do each day for the next 10 days or 30 days or whatever you want to do, but give yourself something not only to focus on, but something to feel productive. Because I think another challenging thing, especially for my type of personality, is that I have to feel productive. And if I'm not, it's a really slippery slope for my own mental health. So if you can pick little projects that will give you little wins along the way, you're going to keep being productive. Time will go faster. You'll come out of this. And what I ended up doing was back when COVID hit, I quickly came up with the Get Her Power Back bundle idea, and I called up 18 other youth mentors and parenting experts and said, I want to do this bundle thing. And, I threw myself into that project, and that took up the better part of 4 weeks of the current crisis. And I came out of it and I really felt like, wow, I felt like I'd been in my own little bubble and not being affected by what was going on by COVID at all because I had that focus. So that's what I would say to my 15-year-old self. Tanya, don't overdo it on information and get yourself a project.
And what's very interesting is I don't think it actually matters whether you're 15 or 35. That information would be really useful about not overloading yourself with all the bad things in the world. And like you say, having a project. So, for example, for me, doing this podcast has really kept me occupied over the Easter weekend. Well, I know it was a public holiday, but it didn't really feel like one. So I was busy sorting this out and what have you.
Yeah, that's it.
But thank you very much for that advice. Now, you asked that really good question, whether it's Tanya in the 90s or Tanya in 2020.
I think the 90s would have encompassed quite a few illegal drive-bys of my friends' houses, waving madly and shouting gossip out the window to each other, just to try to keep some sort of a connection.
Yeah, I think I would have found it probably more difficult than now, because you still have, even though you don't have the physical social connection, you've still got the opportunity to connect socially. And one final question. So you, over the last few years, have devoted your life to, well, not devoted your life, but focused on empowering. You've got your own family to think about, but on empowering teenage girls. And yet, as you've said, you're a mum of 2 young boys. And since I started this podcast, I've been asking about what topics people would be interested in hearing about. And one of them is about homeschooling primary school age children, which I've got a year 5 primary school daughter as well. So she's a little bit older. You've got a preppy.
I have, yeah.
Which is obviously a completely different situation to a grade 5 type person. So what top tips would you give for working from home and homeschooling a young primary school age child?
My God, don't do it. No. No, I must admit, I've actually come into the homeschooling side of things with as positive a mindset as I can, because as we've already sort of subtextually established here, I am a hard worker. I'm a hard worker and I love projects and I get addicted to work and I love doing them. And I have to be busy and I have to do things. What that has also resulted in is that I've been working virtually full time since Jessie was about 8 months old, my oldest. And I had a period of time off when I had Toby, but even then, in fact, I didn't. I launched Girl Shaped Flames. The website went live the day he was born. And,
oh my goodness.
I know, God, I have to write a book for poor Toby, my youngest, about what his first 2 years of his life were like. Okay, so basically tips-wise, I will preface this by saying I'm very lucky to have a mini-me when it comes to Jesse. He's very academic. He loves to learn. He loves his numbers and his letters and so on and so forth. So maybe there was some naivety that happened when I walked into this, because I was a bit like, God, it's going to be great. We've got this desk set up where we face each other and he's going to sit there and do his reading eggs and I'm going to sit here and work and all the rest of it. And that got blown to shreds about 45 minutes into the first day, when I came to realize over the course of the first day, and look, I knew this, I just needed to see it in action. Children, and particularly little children, they have, obviously we all know, short attention spans, but it's not just attention spans, it's focus and energy spans. And so when Jesse's doing something he loves, he can blow an hour and a half on math seeds and barely look up, and reading eggs. He just loves it. But if I'm getting him to concentrate on something that he doesn't love, we've got about 8 minutes in the tank, and then he starts getting edgy. And you start reading their body language and you can see that he's throwing his head back and saying he doesn't want to do it, and he's wriggling around. So I guess what I've gotten into the rhythm of doing is trying to get him to do the things he doesn't love earlier on in the morning in the day, when he's still got a bit of stamina and the idea of this school today at home with mum is still new and fresh until about 11 a.m. So I try to knock over the things that he's not super keen on. Then it's almost it's not a reward, but then once he starts losing some steam, then I can go, all right, buddy, why don't we do reading eggs for a bit? I also make sure he gets really regular breaks. I don't do more than 40 minutes at a time with him. And then we go out and we have some morning tea. I don't generally let him go and start running around the yard if I know I'm about to try to get him to do another 45 minutes. But when it comes to lunchtime, then he gets a good sort of half hour or so to go and just run around. Again, by the time he's finished that, he's going to come back and be pretty reluctant to get back into it. So that's when I bring in more activity learning after we've done our concentrating stuff in the morning. I do more activity-based things. So we went around the house yesterday and made the alphabet out of objects that started with the letters. So an apple and a button and a cup and a whatever. We laid them all out on the veranda to make a big alphabet. You know, that kept him learning for another 45 minutes. And then really you just have to make peace with the fact that, you know, if you've covered a lot of ground in the morning, by 1 o'clock, he's done, he's cooked, and there's no point forcing it anymore. So that's when we go on a nature walk and we look for bugs and spiders, and I still, you know, integrate some learning aspects through that. We talk about it, come back, look at a video on spiders, whatever it is. But the thing I've learned with him and little people is that you just have to go with their focus and energy and figure them out as the child as to when do they work best and when do you lose them. And by God, don't push it if you've lost them. Like if they're gone and they're not going to focus and do it, it's so not worth anyone's emotional stability. Sit there and be like, we're going to get to the letter Z. I mean, we gave up an N because that's as far as we get on the alphabet. There's no point. But I would say that, and you know what, it's so interesting because that is the same for teenagers, is that teenagers will be able to focus for longer, but all of those things still apply. If it's stuff they enjoy, they'll do it for longer. If they don't want to do it, they'll kick a fuss. And they all have, you know, the Pomodoro technique is based upon the understanding that we only have about 20 minutes. You have somewhere between a 20-minute and a 45-minute focus span. And once you understand your own rhythm, you work to that rhythm and you take breaks in order to fit that rhythm. So it's the same kind of thing that applies. You just bring it down to a 5-year-old.
Absolutely. Now, it's funny, my youngest child, who's a bit of a wild child, full of energy.
Yeah.
Do you know what she loves? Embroidery.
No.
If I give her an embroidery set, she'll sit there quietly for 45 minutes.
No.
She looks like some kind of Edwardian lady doing her needlework. And she says as well, she knows it. She goes, what I need is a nice embroidery set to calm me down. Thank you very much for sharing all your insights, advice, your story and everything, Tanya.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
If you send me all the details to share on the
if anyone just heads to girlshapedflames.com, it's all there. But I'll send you some specific links to the things that we talked about.
Yeah, that will be fabulous. And is there anything else that you'd like to share at all?
Not really. Just if I'll probably take the opportunity to hammer home that last point about communicating with the young people in your house or world at the moment. Just find a way to just exchange a couple of sentences, and they can be banal, they can be about the texture of the spaghetti tonight, but whatever it is, just keep that channel open, because girls in particular connect through communication, and you really have to have that there. If you expect she's going to come and talk to you about anything more dramatic than the texture of the spaghetti, you have to have that conversation first. So yeah, and also I think finally, like, they're going to be okay. I think that's the other thing. A lot of people are getting very worked up about how dramatic this is going to be on their lives and how affected they're going to be and what's the world going to be like for them moving forward. But we forget that we're all adaptable creatures and human beings, and the fact that we have social support and communication and family means that they are going to be okay. And as long as we can keep all of these things up that we're going to help support them with, they're going to be fine.
That's great. Well, thank you for that positive final note. Thank you very much, Tanya.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so cool.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're looking for career advice, your next career opportunity, or to grow your tech team, then please call me, Nicola Steele, on 0499 773 546, or go to our website, jjptalent.com.au. The Don't Just Survive, Thrive podcast is part of the Spotlight series, which includes the YouTube channel Spotlight on Software Development. If you want more insights into the software industry, particularly tech startups, then subscribe to the Spotlight on Software Development YouTube channel. Thank you for listening. Until next time.